If you've ever bought a cheap tool and had it strip a screw, snap mid-cut, or turn a 10-minute job into a 2-hour headache, you already know why most under $20 tools aren't worth it. But these 12 are the rare ones that actually perform. And one of these fixes a problem that usually costs people way more than 20 bucks to learn the hard way. For each one, I'll tell you exactly what it's for and why it's worth buying. Let's start with number 12. Tool 12, Calculated Industries Airshim Inflatable Pry Bar. This is a tool most people walk past because they assume they can work around the problem instead of solving it directly. A door needs to be lifted slightly. A cabinet sits just a bit too low. An appliance has to be nudged into place without scraping the floor. None of these feel like big jobs until you're alone, crouched in a tight space, and trying to hold something steady while adjusting it at the same time. That's where frustration usually takes over. People reach for screwdrivers, wood shims, pry bars, or whatever happens to be nearby. Those improvised fixes slip, crack, or leave marks behind. You're fighting gravity and leverage instead of making a clean adjustment. And once something shifts unexpectedly, you're suddenly fixing damage instead of finishing the task you started. This tool exists to remove that entire struggle. It slides into extremely narrow gaps, inflates gradually, and lifts with control instead of force. The lift is smooth, predictable, and stable, which means you can fine-tune positioning instead of reacting to sudden movement. Because it holds its position once inflated, you can step back, check alignment, and make adjustments without rushing. That matters most when you're working alone and don't have a second set of hands to help. What makes it especially useful is how gentle it is on finished surfaces. Floors don't get scratched, paint doesn't chip, edges don't get crushed. It does one specific job, but it does it in a way that prevents secondary problems from showing up later. At $18.97, it's not something you use every weekend. It's something you're relieved to have when the situation demands precision instead of strength. As the list continues, the focus moves away from lifting and alignment and toward a far more common frustration, when the tool you're using should work but keeps failing at the exact moment you need it most. Tool 11. DeWalt MaxFit Ultra Screwdriving Bit Set. This is one of those purchases people delay because, on the surface, it feels unnecessary. You already have bits, they still fit in the drill, they still sort of work, so you keep using them. Right up until a screw starts camming out halfway in, the head rounds off, and what should have been a quick job turns into damage control. That moment usually gets blamed on the screw or the material, but most of the time, the real issue is fit and wear. Bits slowly lose their edges. Tolerances loosen. The tip no longer sits square in the screw head, so instead of transferring force cleanly, it slips. The harder you push, the worse the problem becomes. That's how fasteners get stripped and projects stall for no good reason. A better bit set doesn't feel dramatic, it feels calm. The bit seats properly, stays centered, and holds engagement as pressure increases. That changes how the work feels in your hands. You're not fighting the drill or bracing for slip. You're just driving the screw and moving on. Having a wide range of sizes available also matters more than people expect. Reaching for the exact fit instead of close enough is often the difference between a clean drive and a ruined fastener. There's also a long-term effect people don't notice right away. When bits hold up longer, you stop treating them as disposable. You change them less often, you replace fewer screws, and jobs stay cleaner from start to finish. At $19.88, this isn't about chasing durability claims. It's about removing one of the most common failure points in everyday drilling and driving, so the work stays simple instead of turning into a hassle. The next item has nothing to do with drills at all. It's about speed, access, and not having to spread tools across the floor just to tighten one fastener. Tool 10. 3 Husky Folding Hex Key Sets. Hex keys are everywhere, which is exactly why most people underestimate how much trouble they cause. You don't notice them when things are going smoothly. You notice them when you're halfway through a small job and realize the size you need isn't in the pile you grabbed. Or worse, the key you're using almost fits but not quite. That's usually when a simple adjustment starts going sideways. The problem isn't that people don't own hex keys, it's that they own them in the most inconvenient form possible. Loose keys scatter. Full-size sets feel like overkill for quick fixes. Metric and SAE get mixed together, and similar-looking sizes invite mistakes. You end up testing one key after another, applying pressure before you're sure, and that's how fasteners get rounded without much warning. Folding hex key sets remove most of that friction. Everything stays together, flips out cleanly, and lets you move through sizes quickly without spreading tools across the floor or workbench. The pocket knife style design sounds simple, but it changes how often the tool actually gets used. Instead of digging for a full set, you grab one compact piece and handle the job in seconds. Having separate sets for different standards matters more than people expect. It reduces guesswork and keeps you from forcing the wrong size just to see if it works. That alone prevents a lot of unnecessary damage. The hardened steel construction also plays a quiet role here. Keys that hold their shape keep engagement tight, which means less slipping and more confidence when you apply torque. At $14.97, this isn't about power or capability. It's about speed, organization, and reducing the small annoyances that slow you down far more often than big problems ever do. When a tool makes quick jobs stay quick, it tends to earn its place without much debate. From here, the focus shifts away from turning fasteners and towards seeing what you're doing when the space itself becomes the problem. Tool 9. Husky 5, 150, Lumens Dimmable Headlight. A lot of people don't think of lighting as a tool. They think of it as something that's either there or not. And that mindset is exactly why so many small jobs turn into slow, irritating ones. Under a sink, behind a washer, inside a cabinet, or up in an attic, overhead lights stop helping almost immediately. You're working in shadows whether you like it or not. Most people try to adapt instead of fixing the problem. A flashlight gets balanced on a pipe. A phone gets propped up against whatever's nearby. It works for about 30 seconds. Then the light shifts, your shadow moves, and suddenly you're guessing instead of seeing. One hand ends up managing the light while the other tries to do the work. And that's when screws slip, parts drop, or something gets installed slightly wrong. A headlight changes that dynamic completely. The light stays exactly where you're looking, which means your attention stays on the task instead of constantly adjusting illumination. Being able to control brightness matters more than it sounds. Full output is useful in open spaces, but dialed down light is better up close and keeps batteries from draining unnecessarily. That flexibility makes it useful for quick inspections, as well as longer jobs. There's also a safety aspect people don't talk about enough. Clear visibility reduces rushed movements and awkward reaches, especially in tight or unfamiliar spaces. When you can actually see what your hands are doing, you move with more confidence and less strain. At $14.97, this isn't a specialty gadget. It's a quiet upgrade that makes almost every other tool work better by letting you see clearly while using it. From here, the list moves away from visibility and toward one of the most common interruptions in any project, when something small gets dropped and suddenly becomes the only thing you can't reach. Tool 8. Anvil Telescopic Magnetic Pickup Tool. This is one of those tools that feels unnecessary right up until the exact second it isn't. A screw slips out of your fingers, a washer drops and bounces once, a bolt rolls under something heavy, and suddenly the entire job pauses, not because the work is difficult, but because one tiny piece is now completely out of reach. Most people respond by improvising. They get down on the floor, reach blindly, slide a hand into a gap that's just a little too tight, or start moving things that were already positioned correctly. In garages, under sinks, or near appliances, that often means awkward body positions and wasted time. The frustration isn't just physical, it's the feeling that something trivial is now controlling the pace of the whole project. This tool exists to stop that from happening. The telescoping design gives you reach without forcing your body into spaces it doesn't belong. You extend it, guide the tip, and retrieve the part cleanly instead of nudging it farther away. The magnetic head matters, but so does the control. Being able to approach a dropped fastener from the side or at an angle is what makes the difference in real-world spaces. There's also a rhythm benefit people don't think about. When small interruptions disappear, you stay focused. You don't lose momentum. You don't rush the next step just to make up time. Over the course of a project, that adds up to cleaner work and less frustration overall. At $16.97, this isn't about strength or complexity, it's about removing one of the most common, irritating delays people run into when working with hardware. From here, attention shifts from retrieving lost parts to keeping materials locked in place, especially when hands get tired and surfaces don't want to cooperate. Tool 7. Husky Metal Staple Gun Set. This is a tool people tend to underestimate because they associate staple guns with light craft work or flimsy plastic models that jam more than they help. Then they try to secure plastic sheeting, insulation, fabric, or cardboard, and realize how much effort it takes to keep things in place without the right tool. The frustration usually shows up in your hands first. Weak staple guns require excessive force, slip mid-squeeze, or fail to drive staples consistently. You end up pressing harder, adjusting angles, and fighting the tool instead of focusing on the material you're trying to secure. That's when accuracy drops and fatigue sets in. A solid metal staple gun changes that experience completely. The weight and rigidity help drive staples cleanly and evenly, while the ergonomic grip reduces strain over repeated use. Being able to reload quickly matters more than people expect too. Interruptions break rhythm, especially on larger tasks. At $19.97, this set earns its place by doing one simple thing well: keeping materials exactly where you put them without a fight. As the countdown continues, the focus shifts to a tool almost everyone owns in some form, but rarely in a version that actually covers every situation. Tool 6. Husky Variety Screwdriver Set. Most people already own screwdrivers, which is exactly why this category gets ignored. You grab the nearest one, make it work, and move on. That's fine, until you hit a screw that's recessed, angled, half-blocked, or buried in a place your standard driver simply can't reach. That's when a basic set stops being enough. The problem usually isn't force, it's access and fit. Short screws need short drivers so you're not bumping into surrounding surfaces. Deep set screws need length. Tight corners need offset tools. Without the right shape, you end up twisting your wrist at bad angles, scraping knuckles or leaning too hard, and damaging the screw head. Once a screw starts slipping, the job slows down for no good reason. This set earns its place by covering those situations people don't plan for. Multiple lengths mean you're not forcing reach. Offset drivers handle the awkward angles that straight tools can't. Clear size markings save time when you're moving fast. And better tip quality matters more than most people realize. Worn tips are one of the fastest ways to strip a screw, even when you're being careful. At $19.97, this isn't about owning more tools. It's about having the right shape when the space works against you. Quick pause. If this breakdown is helping you make better buying decisions, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the list. From here, attention shifts to a tool almost everyone uses casually, then realizes they reach for far more often than they ever expected. Tool 5. DeWalt Retractable Utility Knife. This is one of those tools almost everyone owns, and almost no one thinks much about until it starts slowing them down. A cheap box cutter, a knife with a loose blade, or something that's been dropped one too many times will still cut, but never cleanly. You compensate without realizing it, pushing harder, going slower, or making extra passes just to get through material. That's where small problems creep in. Blades snag instead of slicing. The knife flexes mid-cut, the slider sticks. So you're fighting the tool instead of focusing on the line you're trying to follow. On tougher jobs like trimming drywall, scoring laminate, or breaking down heavy cardboard, those issues compound fast and turn a simple task into unnecessary effort. A well-built, retractable utility knife removes that friction immediately. The solid body keeps the blade stable, so cuts feel controlled instead of shaky. The retract mechanism moves smoothly, which matters when you're adjusting blade depth mid-task, and having extra blades stored inside the handle changes how often you actually replace them, which means cleaner cuts and less frustration overall. At $14.97, this isn't about premium features, it's about reliability in a tool you reach for far more often than you expect. From here, the list shifts toward a tool that's less about force and more about alignment, getting things level before mistakes become permanent. Tool 4. Ryobi Compact Laser Level. This is a tool people tend to skip because they trust their eyes. A shelf looks straight enough while you're installing it. A picture frame seems level when you step back a few feet. And in the moment, that judgment usually feels good enough. The problem is that good enough has a way of aging poorly once the room is finished and your attention isn't focused on the task anymore. What trips people up isn't a big mistake, it's small inconsistency. One shelf is slightly off. The next one matches the first instead of the wall. Suddenly, nothing lines up, and you can't unsee it. Once holes are drilled or anchors are set, fixing those errors means patching drywall, repainting, and pretending you meant to do it that way. A compact laser level removes that risk before it shows up. Instead of guessing, you get a fixed reference that stays true while you work. That matters most when you're installing more than one thing, or when alignment carries across a surface instead of living in one spot. The small size makes it practical, easy to store, quick to deploy, and not overkill for short jobs. Being able to secure it in place and work hands-free also changes the experience when you're on your own. At $19.97, this isn't about chasing perfection. It's about avoiding small visual mistakes that quietly bother you every time you walk past them. From here, the list turns toward situations where alignment isn't the problem. It's delivering controlled impact without damaging what you're working on. Tool 3. Milwaukee Drilling Hammer. This is a tool people usually buy only after they've already struggled without it. They start with a regular hammer, swing harder than they want to, and still feel like nothing is moving the way it should. The instinct is to add force, but that usually just adds fatigue and mess, not progress. Some jobs don't respond to speed or finesse. Driving stakes into hard ground, tapping masonry chisels, setting anchors, or breaking through stubborn material all require mass more than momentum. Lighter hammers bounce, lose energy on impact, and force you to overcompensate with bigger swings. That's when accuracy drops, and your arm starts paying the price. A drilling hammer changes the equation by letting the weight work for you. The heavier head delivers solid, controlled strikes with less effort, which means you stay accurate without wearing yourself out. That control matters when you're working near finished surfaces or need repeated, consistent hits. The handle design plays a role too. Reducing vibration keeps the tool from feeling harsh in your hands over time. At $19.97, this isn't about extreme demolition. It's about having the right kind of force available when lighter tools simply stall out. Next is a tool almost everyone owns, but one that quietly determines whether projects start smoothly or begin with frustration. Tool 2. Stanley Powerlock Tape Measure. This is a tool people rarely think about until it slows them down. Measuring feels simple. Pull the tape, read the number, move on. But when the blade bends too early, the hook feels sloppy, or the markings are hard to read. Even basic measurements start taking longer than they should. And when you're working alone, those small annoyances multiply fast. Most frustration with tape measures comes from instability. You try to span a distance by yourself, and the blade collapses halfway out. You reset it, brace it, or guess the measurement just to keep moving. That's not a skill issue. It's a tool limitation. When the tape won't hold its shape, accuracy turns into approximation. A more solid tape measure fixes that quietly. The blade stays extended longer, which means you can measure wider gaps without a second set of hands. Clear, well-spaced markings reduce hesitation, especially when you're making repeated cuts or marks. Durability matters too. The hook takes the most abuse, and once that loosens or wears down, every measurement becomes suspect. At $18.97, this isn't about advanced features. It's about consistency, speed, and not having to double-check work you should be able to trust the first time. And with only one tool left, the countdown ends on something small, but essential. The kind of thing you only notice when it's missing and always appreciate when it's complete. Tool 1. Husky 26 Piece Hex Key Set. This is the tool that usually exposes a weakness in your setup right when you don't have patience for it. You're assembling furniture, adjusting a bike, tightening a handle, or fixing something that already feels minor, and suddenly the hex key you need isn't there. You try a size that's close. It almost fits. It slips once, and now you're tense because you know what comes next. That moment is where cheap or incomplete hex key sets fail people. Loose keys disappear, sets only cover one standard. Markings wear off, and because metric and SAE sizes can feel deceptively close, it's easy to force the wrong one and damage the fastener before you realize it. What should have been a quick adjustment turns into hesitation and guesswork. A complete, well-organized set removes that entire problem. Having both metric and SAE keys together means you stop guessing and start fitting. Clear size markings let you move quickly without squinting or testing multiple keys. The option of long and short arms matters more than most people expect. Sometimes you need leverage, sometimes you need clearance, and switching between the two keeps you from forcing bad angles. Durable steel also plays a quiet role here. When the edges stay sharp, the tool engages the fastener cleanly instead of riding up and slipping under pressure. At $19.97, this isn't about buying something flashy or specialized. It's about closing one of the most common gaps in a home tool setup. Once you own a set like this, hex fasteners stop being a problem you think about at all. And that's usually the best sign a tool earned its place. Cheap tools aren't automatically bad, but bad tools waste time, money, and patience. Everything on this list earned its place by solving a real problem without creating a new one. No filler, no gimmicks. Just tools that do their job and stay out of your way. If you already own a few of these, you're on the right track. If you don't, now you know exactly what's worth picking up and what you can safely walk past. That's the whole point. Fewer regrets, fewer returns, and fewer jobs that take longer than they should. If this breakdown helped you, like the video and subscribe. More lists like this are coming, focused on what's actually worth buying and what isn't.